On the 13th of April, 1360, the French town of Chartres was under siege. Unprepared and poorly defended, all the inhabitants could do was watch as an English army surrounded them. As the French readied themselves for the attack, and the English sharpened their swords for the coming victory, a strange event would occur. A freak storm would barrel out of nowhere and plunge the battlefield into chaos. A natural disaster that would be the savior of the town and leave the English broken on the battlefield. In 1337, the English king, Edward III, had come to press his claims to the French throne, triggering the first phase of the conflict known as the 100 Years' War. A wave of chaos spread across the kingdom as the English carved a swath of blood and fire through the realm. Yet by 1360, the opening phase of the conflict was now coming to its slow and inevitable conclusion. Edward had been plundering and pillaging his way across northern France, unleashing a wave of terror on the peasants in an attempt to draw out the French army from Paris and inflict another humiliating defeat on the Valois crown. But an ill-fated siege of the capital and a retreat from Reims had seen Edward fall back to marauding the provinces. He needed fresh plunder and supplies for his army. Money and food had started to run low, and no king wants to lead a band of hungry, ill-paid murderers. Things can get a bit ugly. So on the holy day of Easter, the English arrived at the cathedral town of Chartres, just south of Paris. The inhabitants were so unprepared that the abbot of Cluny, Antoine de la Roche, the only senior official present, was forced to spearhead the town's defense. He already knew of the English lust for brutality, and what would happen to the inhabitants should the town fall. So the gates were bolted, and men placed along the walls, while under the hot sun, Edward's army established their position and readied themselves for another dull siege. But no sooner had they settled in that a rumble was heard on the horizon, not the beat of advancing cavalry or the dull march of men-at-arms, but the clap of thunder. Dark clouds quickly enveloped the clear sky, fogs crept across the green fields, and the temperature dropped as a sudden storm bore down. Freezing rain threw the siege lines into a muddy confusion. The men started to panic as hailstones pelted them, smashing skulls and killing both men and horse alike. Several fleeing archers were struck by lightning, and Edward's friend, Guy de Beauchamp, son of the Earl of Warwick, was killed by a shower of hail. More men died from exposure as the freezing temperature and icy rain pummeled them. The sleet and fierce winds tore the camp apart and all but destroyed the baggage train. In half an hour, the icy terror would pass as quickly as it arrived, leaving over 1,000 Englishmen and 6,000 horse dead on the battlefield. The besieged town was mostly unharmed. When the danger had passed, de la Roche rode out to the English camp and observed the quagmire of destruction. The abbot proclaimed it a sign of God's displeasure with the English and their ravaging of the French people. Edward also took the storm's appearance as a divine act and quickly made peace with de la Roche. Not willing to tempt fate any further, he removed his army and ended the one-day siege that had cost him so dearly. 3 weeks later, he would sign the Treaty of Bretigny, bringing the first phase of the conflict to a close. The loss of manpower to the storm likely motivated some of Edward's actions, but by that point, he had achieved many of his goals on the continent. Peace would bring some much-needed respite to both kingdoms. However, the English would return to harry and plunder the French in 1369. It wasn't called the 100 Years' War for nothing. But on Easter Monday in 1360, the English had been thoroughly defeated, and the little town of Chartres had survived the worst of the war, and all thanks to a spot of very bad weather.